250 episodes. That's 250 times I've hit record and started a conversation about tabletop sports gaming. Not just about games, but about the stuff around them too. The replays, the projects, the ideas, the memories, and all the reasons this hobby means something to all of us. And a milestone like 250 feels like not really just a number on a spreadsheet. It's more like a reminder of just how many conversations this show has sparked along the way. And today we're going to be talking about IndieCon, and it feels like the right topic because for one weekend, the kinds of conversations that usually happen here on the podcast were happening face to face, across the tables, between games, in a room full of people who just speak this hobby's language fluently. So tonight, for episode 250, let's talk about what happens when the conversations leave the microphone and show up in person. This is the Tabletop SportCast. This is the Tabletop SportCast, your home for sports board game interviews, reviews, and project planning. Because the best sports stories aren't just watched, they're played. Today, it's episode 250. It's a two-parter. We're going to recap IndieCon 2026 and also talk about this milestone episode 250 and kind of the road that got us here in the first place. When I think about really everything that this show has been about, it started with the conversations that took place at a live event. And for me to hit number 250 after coming home from another really fantastic live event just kind of feels like a full circle moment. The podcast, while it started with things like project planning, it also was always about the conversations that we have about these games, the people that we have the conversations with. And, you know, when you're in a live event, that's all the things that are taking place. They're just taking place in real time rather than through something like a podcast. So it really does feel like a kind of fitting moment here. Now, last episode, we touched on when episode 249, it was the road to IndieCon and counted down some of the things that we always look for in a live event. What was funny about that is it kind of has a really funny story to like kind of start today's episode with, which was that if you listen to the opener of the last episode, I was talking about packing my stuff. And my goal was to make the opener sound like it was me actually packing, right? And as I'm driving, I'm listening to it, as I usually do. I try to listen to my own shows, mostly just kind of like take some notes and think about the things that I need to try differently. And I get to the part where I talk about packing my laptop, and then it hits me as I'm already a couple hours into my ride that I forgot to grab the laptop. So everything I had planned around doing the live event, the live show from IndieCon kind of fell by the wayside. And, you know, it may not have been the worst thing either because as I kind of looked around the room and everything, it would have been a difficult thing to pull off. I know some other folks were able to get some kind of live recordings done and stuff, and I think that that's really cool. But I'm not disappointed that I wasn't able to do the live show, even though it would have been great to show some folks like what was happening at the event. But yeah, that's how it goes sometimes. You think you've got everything covered and you leave out one critical piece of the puzzle. And that's what happened to me. For my highlights for the week, just wrapped up a game like 30 minutes ago as I continue my 1986 MLB tournament with Payoff Pitch. It was San Diego Padres at the Cleveland Indians. It was a game I was looking forward to, right? Because I think those 80s Padres teams I was always really excited about. They had some really fun players on them. Obviously, the great Tony Gwynn with the whole lineup centered around that. This team didn't do as well as you would have hoped, especially if you're a Padre fan. And you know, they're a couple years away from the great run that put them in the World Series, but this team was showing its age a little bit. Pitching fell off a little bit, so they weren't as strong of a team. Cleveland, meanwhile, I think was an underrated team. Yeah, they were still kind of like middle of the pack, maybe just above average, middle of the pack. But really impressive lineup when you see them on paper. Some decent pitching, right? They were a really solid team that would just happen to be in a really difficult division. So I was looking forward to this matchup, and it did not disappoint. It was a competitive game, even though I forget if it was the fourth or the fifth inning, Cleveland blew the doors open. They were able to tag the San Diego starter for a few runs, including a big capper with Brooke Jacoby hitting a 3-run home run to really blow the game open. His 3-run home run made it a 5-1 game at the time. San Diego got another run across the board on the board, and they got a few more runners on base throughout the late innings. But once we got it to the eighth, it's the first 7 innings, Tom Candiotti did a great job of just keeping them off the scoreboard for the most part. Only gave up a couple of runs. And then he was able to turn it over to Doug Jones in the eighth, Ernie Camacho in the ninth, as they pulled out the win. 5-2, Cleveland advances, and they will move to the second round in their bracket. And yeah, so great little game there. We were about just getting underway, just a couple of sessions in, 4 games out of 25 that we're going to end up playing. So got that one rolling. All right, let's come back and talk about IndiCon first, and then we'll talk more about that kind of road to 250. So let's recap. I'm going to kind of talk through IndiCon and mostly take you through what my weekend was like. So first and foremost, started my drive. We talked a little bit about, that moment when I was listening to my own podcast. Got a chance to listen to some other podcasts as well. Listened to some Digital to Dice. Had some 1988 tops that I listened to as well. And then I had downloaded a book, audio book for me to listen to. I actually downloaded a couple of them. So on the ride there to IndiCon, I had about 10 hours in the car. I listened to the Universal Baseball Association. This is a book from, I think, the 60s. I don't know how long ago it was from, but I want to say it was like originally written in like the 60s. Not going to go into too many details about the book, but I think a lot of you have probably had a chance to read it. I was really happy to find it as an audiobook. I've looked for it a couple of times and hadn't found it. So I don't know if it's a recent recording or not, but I was really happy to see it as an audiobook. I'm probably going to be covering that in a future episode to talk a little bit more about the actual book, and we'll actually get into the book a little bit in more detail in that episode that'll be upcoming. But that was what carried me through pretty much right into Auburn, Indiana. I had a quick stopover. As I had mentioned, my son's going to school out that way, so I had a chance to touch base with him, have some dinner with him, and actually stayed in the same town as his school before finishing my ride out to Auburn the next morning. And I probably arrived on site like around 11 a.m. or so. It was right around there. And there were already people kind of gathering in the lobby. I think a few people had stayed there the night before, so that was really great. I got a chance to see a lot of old friends, a few new people, which was also awesome, and really spent most of that first couple hours just catching up with folks, right? I had some games that I had in my car and really left them there. I didn't really take any of them out for that first day. I did get a chance in the hotel the night before to play another game in the 75-76 ABA tournament or co-op. So I was, played some bank shot in my hotel once I got there and just wanted to relax a little bit. So I had that going for a couple hours. And yeah, so just catching up with a lot of folks, as we got to IndiCon. And right around lunchtime or so, at the hotel, got a chance to sit down with Gary Brown, one of the designers who was there. We didn't know Gary was going to be in attendance, so I was real happy to see him there. And got a chance to sit down and play some round trip baseball. So that was my first like real new game for this week. And I sat down with Paul Salzgaber. We've been kind of doing this 94 MLB co-op. So that's the set that Gary's been doing a lot of playtesting with as well. So we had some 94 teams and we sat down and played that. And Paul played with the Indians. And I took one of their rivals in division with the Chicago White Sox. Both really good teams. I think they're, right now in our co-op, they're sitting first and second in the AL Central, and that's pretty much where they had been. Both teams have some tremendous hitters in there. And we just, got a chance to like learn the game. Picked it up quickly. It is a very easy game to get up and running with, especially if you've got some familiarity with like the original Grid Zone, which both of us did. So that really helped because I think that's a lot of the design is from that. If you're familiar with things like Dice United or Stone Cold Hockey, you're going to have some familiarity with some of the charts as well. So it's your typical Gary Brown design game. But yeah, we had a lot of fun playing it. I think it's going to be a real winner of a game. I think some of his fictional stuff is going to really show up well as there's going to be a good showing as well. I'll probably look to using it more for the fictional, but at the same time, like I'm curious to see what it'll be like. And I think he's going to have a really good ratings guide so that you can make your own teams for it. And I will probably take advantage of that. And, he went with individual player cards. I think some people will probably try to design like team cards as well. And I could really see this game working well with team cards or individual cards. Baseball is one of those things that just works really well with individual cards. And, when you want flexibility to create different lineups or rotations and all that kind of stuff, it does help. But at the same time, I could see folks embracing working with like a team card. And with the number of ratings that you have, which it's pretty simplified, you really could. You could set this up as like a team card pretty easily. Not going to get too much into that. I think that's another one that we'll have for a future episode. We'll get into that a little bit down the road. After that, let's see, did I play any other games? I think, and again, I got back to just kind of like hanging out with folks, walking around, talking to folks. Didn't do a whole lot of other playing that day of anything. And then we headed over probably like late afternoon, probably like 3 or 4 o'clock. We headed over to the meadery. So there was a meadery in town that we all gathered at, and kind of hung out at a table with a few folks. Mark Russell, Paul Salzgaber, Mike Ignatowski, a few other people would drop in and out from the table that we were hanging out at. And, it was just, again, just like the place where you just had some conversation. So a lot of folks were playing some games at the meadery as well, but we kind of just had a table where it was mostly just conversation driven. And we're just talking a lot about different things, talking to Mike about some of his like designs with like Purple Wolf and Green Fox, things like that. Talking about some of the other games that are out there. I don't remember all the details. It's not as important, but just like, we probably spent like 3 or 4 hours there just chilling out and talking about the hobby. And that was great. So had some dinner, went back to the hotel, got a chance to just, again, talk to some folks. Did drop on for about 5 minutes, nothing major, but just dropped on to a live show with John Turnbull, who was doing some recording from the hotel. So I had a chance to jump on to his show. And the rest of the time was just kind of spent like hanging out and talking through games and just, kind of relaxing with everybody. Next day, Saturday, was the main event day. And we headed over to the early V8 Ford Museum and more of the same. I did bring a bunch of games in that day, although again, wasn't really focused on trying to play anything that I had. I really wanted to kind of, walk around, do some different things. Charles Helms was running a History Maker golf tournament, so I did sit down at one point and played a little foursome. Me, Paul Salzgeber, Mark Russell, Keith Avalone. We played our 2 rounds of golf all together. I had a very unusual day. My first round, I ended up with 3 unusual results in the 18 holes. And all 3 were pretty positive. I think I had got like one where I got an eagle on like, I think it was the 3rd hole, eagled that one with a, got hot for the rest of the round. And then later on, I made a great putt that got me like a birdie, I think, and was sunny the rest of the round. So I had some really good intangible results that never came into play for me at any point after those. And then I had a 3rd one that was like a good, huge par save for me that prevented me from picking up a negative quality. And for the first round, I shot a 68. So I was pretty happy with that. 18 was the first hole that I actually got a clutch putt. And that's usually like when I do my ratings, I try to bank on getting a lot of clutch putts. And I really, want to make sure, like we did the whole thing where you create your own golfer. You get 2 full qualities, 3 partials. I went with my typicals. Like I like to have a full gold putter. I like to have full champion. And then I took like semi-master, semi-legend, and I think I went semi-icon as my other one. And yeah, just didn't get a lot of, I was only 18 was the first clutch putt that I had. I had some other opportunities to get some birdie putts and earned some chips along the way that I was always using towards birdie putts, which is another strategy that I like to use. Don't really buy that many holes. Although I think it's either the first round or the second round that I did like take control on 18 since I had 2 chips left over. But I can't remember if that was the first or second round. Second round went off the rails quickly. It seemed like every hole I was pretty much facing double difficult putts or a clutch putt. And most of my clutch putts I ended up missing. I missed my first 3 clutch putts, even with the gold putter. So I had to pick up some red chips or was costing myself blue chips. That was really what was happening there. And those double difficult putts, I ended up having to lag up a lot just to try to avoid like getting into like double bogey territory a lot. I had cost myself in the first round with going for a double difficult putt and ended up with a double bogey. So that 68 that I shot could have, been a 67. But that second round just was off the rails with my putter. Everything was just a tough putt that I was trying to make. And I ended up with a 77. So horrible round. We were even able to like adjust like a half a quality. So I'd even picked up like a semi-hero for the second round, but nothing really worked in my favor. So it was a tough one. I don't know who ended up winning that. And Keith might end up doing a little recap of the event and covering that, but that was most of my morning. I knew I was going to probably leave around 3:00 that day. I actually never did make it over to the museum, but I had spent a lot of time over there last year. So I wasn't, feeling like I had to make it over there. I really wanted to spend some time in the room with folks and get a chance to do some different things. Keith was doing some play testing for a Fury basketball game. So I did get a chance to sit down and do that for a little while as well. Played one game of that, lost that one. I think, it'll be an interesting game. I think people are going to have a lot of fun with it. It plays really well head to head. I think the solo versions, it's got some work still to figure out. But, like most of the Fury sports, I'm sure he's going to figure out a way to lean into some of the mechanics that he's used for either Fury Hardball or Fury Football to make Fury Basketball really work well. But we had a lot of fun with it. So it's got some really good mechanics to it. And I think people will have a lot of fun with Fury Basketball. Beyond that, I was mostly just kind of walking around the room. Did get a little bit. Tim Face was able to show me ST's basketball game, so I got a chance to sit down with him and watch him play for a little bit. And I really just wanted to get some ideas on the flow of it a little bit, and just talking with him with all the knowledge that he has around basketball games was really good to kind of get a better understanding of that. And beyond that, it was just getting a chance to walk around and talk with folks, seeing some, old faces of folks that I'd met last year or the year before. A few new faces, people like Steve Etzel, who was in attendance, and I've kind of watched his shows a lot on YouTube. So I was really happy to get a chance to sit down and talk with him. And yeah, so had a great day. And then kind of bounced out of there a little early in the afternoon. Didn't stick around the whole night, and that was really intentional. I was gonna meet up with my son again for dinner, and then start my way home. So did a couple hours drive, and spent most of the ride home listening to another audiobook. I actually had downloaded Ready Player One on a suggestion, and had a lot. I didn't make it through the whole book on the way home, but got through a good portion of it, and that was really my weekend. So that was kind of my recap of IndieCon, but another great job by ST and his wife, Jen. They just did an awesome job running the event, organizing everything. Just really, it ran smoothly throughout the entire weekend. All the places that we kind of stopped at were great. Some really good food, and just had a great time. And I think that's the key. You want to go to these events, get a chance to spend some time with folks, and just have a great time. And that happened, and I was really happy with it. So great job for both of them on running another awesome event in Auburn, Indiana. And looking forward to going next year. Probably as ST kind of sent out a recap email, I think I'll pencil in it on the calendar, and hopefully it'll work out from a scheduling standpoint. I'll have to see how things look as we get later in the year, start to see what the school schedules look like, all that stuff. But I could definitely see myself there again next year. All right. Let's come back in a minute, and we will talk a little bit about this episode 250 milestone. Yeah, so it's hard to believe 250 episodes as of today, and it's been a great journey, and I have to thank all of you as listeners for taking part in this journey with me. I've had a lot of great interviews over the years, whether it be designers or members of the community who have come on board and just talked about projects or talked about the games that they love. Designers introducing their new games or talking about some of the other titles that I was just getting introduced to. We've gotten a chance to talk to some of the more established designers, people like Gary Brown or Keith Avalone, Clay Dresslock. And we've had a chance to talk to some of the new breed of designers, like guys like Al Wilson and John Turnbull. And, just had a lot of fun just getting a chance to talk with all kinds of folks on this podcast. It really did start with this whole idea, and it came as I've said before, it started after going to Play.con in 2021. I had done NotCon in 20, had a lot of fun with that, really wanted to make getting to Play.con in 2021 after the pandemic was over as like that thing I really wanted to make sure I went and did. Kind of really centered that year around going to that event. And sitting there and listening to folks talk and hearing the same old thing about folks struggling to get projects completed. And that was really what kind of spurred this podcast on, was this idea of like, hey, that's the niche. That's the thing that I can offer to this community, is bringing some of what I know about running projects through work and being able to apply that to this hobby and make myself a little bit more efficient when it came to delivering projects. And I've been really pleased with it in terms of how it has helped me organize myself for this hobby too, because making that like kind of my brand identity to a degree has forced me to make sure that it is something that it's not like I just kind of talk through it. It actually is something I can execute as well on my tabletop. And I have been able to do that fairly successfully, mixing in lots of small projects with some bigger ones. And gave me a little good chance to talk to a lot of folks about the way that they run their projects too, as we brought members of the community on and talked about things like co-ops, or talked about some of the big projects that they were running, or ideas that they had for running projects in the future. And it's been a really good focus for this podcast over the years. It has morphed into different things now. We don't talk projects as much because there's only so much we can say. But every now and again, I'll probably revisit the idea of talking about projects. We've gotten into doing game reviews, and we've obviously really centered a lot on, interviews and talking with designers. And we'll continue to do that. I'll continue to do that on this podcast going forward as well. And I think that I feel like the podcast it's in a pretty good groove right now. I'm really happy with the content that I'm delivering on a weekly basis. I feel pretty good about having enough topics to talk about on a weekly basis and not really struggling to find things. I usually kind of enter the year with good, 20 or 30 topics on the board that I know I'm going to cover during the year. And then it's just a matter of filling in the gaps as I go. And sometimes that can be a struggle, but most of the time I figure out something that I can throw in there as a topic and kind of fill some of the gaps. And usually when I start with those 20 or 30 topics at the beginning of the year, it covers me throughout the year. It's not like I have my first 20. I usually have some for the end of the year, some for the middle of the year. I have sandwiched into that, some gaps that have to close. So, along the way, each quarter, I probably have 3 or 4 shows that I'm not sure which one of this is going to be yet, but I'll figure it out when I get there, and that's worked out pretty well for me. Looking forward to getting back to some interviews. I had to take a step back from those in March, and that was mostly just because of where my schedule was at. So, we're going to get back into doing some interviews. I think we have one coming up in a couple of weeks, and we'll start to deliver that. But we also have a couple of live events to get to as well. So just got to IndieCon. The plan is to get to Digital to Dice, and then we'll see from there what other ones. I'm hoping to get to 1 or 2 more, but a lot of that will depend on what is going to be offered, in future months. So that's it. That's kind of where we're at. And, if you got feedback for the podcast, please send it in, right? I love to hear what people think about it. If you got ideas for it, and, we'll see where it leads. We'll see what other ideas come to the forefront as we kind of continue to march on now, working towards what will be my next big milestone of hitting the 300. I'll have a big anniversary show later this year as we get to, I guess this will be my 5th anniversary. I know it's season 6, but the way that this worked was I started the podcast in August of 2021, right after Play.com, as I had mentioned. And those first couple of months was a lot of trial and error, as it will always be when you're starting something new. And when I got to the end of 2021, I felt like, okay, I think I know what the format needs to be for this show going forward. I was starting to settle into one at that point, and it felt like a good time to kind of turn the page and say, now we're ready for season 2. So when you look at my podcast, you're going to notice when I'm talking seasons, that talks really about the calendar year that we're in. And then when I talk about the anniversaries, obviously 2022 became the 2nd anniversary, and then 23, 3rd anniversary, right? So, actually, no, 2022 would have been the 1st anniversary. So 2026, we're going to be looking at our 5th anniversary for the show in August, even though we're already in season 6, right? So that's how that will work is when it changes calendar years, we go to a new season. All right. But all along the way, we just keep counting up with the episode counts and trying to hit a lot of different sports too. And I feel like we've done a pretty good job of covering a lot of different sports as we've gone through all this too. And, as long as we got designers releasing games, there's always going to be new content for us to touch on. And we'll have plenty of things to touch on in the coming months. All right, I think that's it for today. Let's kind of come back and wrap up today's episode. Yep, so that's going to be a wrap on episode 250. A little bit of a ramble today. I wanted to make sure we kind of touched on it. I just did a top 5 list last week. Didn't want to do like another like highlight moment thing. And honestly, it would have been a little harder for me to do kind of like the key moments of IndiCon, mostly because I got a chance to just kind of be myself for IndiCon. I didn't feel like there was a lot of things I had to take part in. All said and done, I played only like 3 or 4 games throughout the trip, and a couple of those were in my hotel room, like at night, when I just was like trying to relax and stuff. Most of it was, just conversations throughout the weekend. So I really enjoyed that part of it. Cause it's been a while. I think it was Play.con last year. No, it was the Iowa 80 truck stop event when Keith Avalon was releasing Truckin' 76. That was the last time I'd had a chance. So it was like September. It's the last chance I had to get in front of some of the folks from the hobby. So it's been a while, and I was really happy to be able to get out and do that again at IndieCon, and appreciate ST and Jen for running that event, and just had a great time. All right, I hinted at next week's episode 251. I am going to talk about the Universal Baseball Association. We're going to dive into the book, talk a little bit about it. There may be some spoiler alerts if you haven't listened to it or read it. But it's been out long enough, right? So I think spoiler alerts are okay at this point. So we'll talk about that next week. But until then, thanks for listening.